Across the vast oceans, there are remote and unforgiving islands that seem almost impossible for people to live on. This entire island is actually a massive volcano rising out of the water, and it's ready to wake up. A town where every trip out to sea means weaving through towering icebergs. And islands thousands of miles away from the mainland. Getting there means spending an entire week crossing the open ocean. Every day on these islands is defined by adapting and struggling. But people still choose to stay, even after nature has forced them to leave. This unbelievable resilience makes you wonder, how can people survive on islands this remote? The most incredible example of people refusing to leave is Fogo Island, more than 370 miles off the West African coast. The island is actually a giant volcano rising out of the Atlantic. Pico do Fogo stands 9,280 feet tall, and it's still active. The ground is covered in dark, volcanic ash, cracked open by old lava flows. Getting here means taking a ferry or a small domestic flight, then riding a local jeep over rough volcanic roads. About 1,000 people live inside the Chão das Caldeiras caldera. In 2014, an eruption destroyed 75% of the village. Everyone had to evacuate, but they came back. Scattered across the grey landscape are small, round homes with cone-shaped roofs. Their walls are built from rough volcanic stone found on the island. There is no running water, so people collect rainwater year-round. They also use geothermal heat from beneath the ground to warm their homes at night. More than 100 volcanoes, endless fields of black lava stretching to the horizon. This Mars-like island is called Lanzarote. Just 78 miles off the West African coast, Lanzarote has a semi-desert climate. It receives only about 150 millimeters of rain a year. From above, the island is covered with thousands of circular pits that look like bomb craters. They're actually a unique farming system created by the locals. They dug thousands of pits, 3 to 10 feet deep, through volcanic ash to reach the fertile soil below. These pits are used to grow grapes. The porous volcanic ash absorbs moisture and overnight dew, holding water in the soil without irrigation. Thanks to this, more than 150,000 people have turned a volcanic wasteland into a world-famous wine region known for its Malvasia volcanica grapes. The Faroe Islands sit alone in the North Atlantic, made up of 18 volcanic islands. Towering cliffs plunge into the sea. Green valleys stretch across the landscape. But because the soil is so thin, there are almost no trees. The weather is harsh. Rain and fog cover the islands for around 270 days each year. Powerful ocean storms slam into the cliffs with enough force to sweep almost anything away. Even so, more than 50,000 people call these islands home. Colourful houses sit along the cliff edges topped with thick grass roofs that help keep out the cold and strong winds. Sheep roam freely through the valleys, outnumbering people. Sheep farming and salmon fishing are the island's main industries. Fish and lamb are preserved by hanging them in the salty sea breeze for the long, dark winter. Hidden beneath grey mist, the Lofoten Islands look both breathtaking and unforgiving. Sharp granite peaks rise like giant blades into the sky. At the foot of the mountain sits a small fishing village. Bright red wooden houses stand on slender stilts driven into the icy sea. When winter arrives, Lofoten disappears into the darkness of the polar night when the sun never rises. Freezing winds howl through the mountain passes. Snowstorms sweep across the islands. Everywhere you look, there's ice, seawater, and biting cold. Yet inside the small homes, warm yellow firelight still glows, bringing life to this lonely island. Our next stop is the Isle of Skye, lying between mainland northwestern Scotland and the Atlantic Ocean. The island is filled with steep green valleys dotted with dark limestone formations of every shape and The most famous is the Old Man of Store, a towering rock spire that rises 180 feet into the air. Getting here means driving along winding mountain roads. On one side are sheer cliffs, on the other, deep drops lined with jagged rocks. On foggy days, visibility almost disappears. Driving these narrow, slippery roads becomes a real survival challenge. Even in these harsh conditions, about 10,000 people have lived here for centuries. Small fishing villages sit along quiet bays where rows of colourful houses stand in sharp contrast to the island's rugged landscape. Would you dare land on a runway supported by hundreds of concrete pillars rising straight out of the sea? Welcome to Madeira, home to one of the world's most dangerous airports. But that's only part of what makes this island so extreme. Beneath the water stand towering sea stacks like silent guards. Above them, the entire island is actually a massive volcano rising from the Atlantic. With almost no flat land, people in Nuns Valley built terraced fields to collect water for farming. Along the cliffs, hundreds of homes are stacked on steep slopes, exposed to both landslides and crashing waves. Across the island, tunnels carved through the mountains connect one community to another. Despite the rugged terrain, people still choose to stay, finding ways to overcome nature's challenges. Pico Island is dominated by the giant Mount Pico, rising 7,713 feet above the Azores. It's the tallest mountain in Portugal. Though dormant, it still feels powerful. No matter where you stand, its dark silhouette is always in view. At its base lie calm blue lakes, while the surrounding land is dry and black with volcanic rock. Millions of lava stones have been stacked into low walls. Together they form a maze that shelters grapevines from the salty sea wind. In 2004, UNESCO recognized this stone maze as a World Heritage Site. If laid end to end, The walls would circle the Earth twice. Visitors are also drawn to the island's traditional homes, built from black volcanic stone with white plaster. From a distance, they look like dairy cattle resting across the rocky landscape. Unlike most volcanic islands, São Miguel is covered in every shade of green. Formed inside a volcanic crater, Sete Cidades is famous for its twin lakes. One shines emerald green, the other reflects a deep blue. Around the crater stretches lush subtropical forest, surrounded by the blue waters of the Atlantic. In the Furnace Valley, white steam rises into the air. Boiling hot springs bubble just steps from people's homes. Stone barriers surround them as a warning. If you ever visit, you have to try cozido das furnas. Meat and vegetables are sealed inside a large pot, buried in the hot ground, and cooked entirely by geothermal heat for 6 hours. Flores sits on the North American tectonic plate, the westernmost point of Europe. Covering 143 square kilometers, the island is home to about 3,400 people. Named after flowers, Flores is blanketed with millions of hydrangeas every summer. Thanks to its heavy rainfall, the island is filled with dramatic scenery. At Porto da Alagoinha, around 20 waterfalls pour down moss-covered cliffs into a quiet lake below. Despite its peaceful beauty, the weather changes fast. Thick fog and powerful storms can cut the island off for days. People live in small historic villages perched along towering cliffs. There are no shopping malls, internet service comes and goes with the weather. Just a simple life closely tied to nature. Would you live in a place the world seems to have forgotten? Our next stop takes us to one of the roughest corners of the Atlantic, Santo Antão. Huge grey volcanic mountains rise like giant walls across the sky. That thin line winding through them is the road. Old stone roads are narrow, steep, and cling to sheer cliffs. Right beside the wheels are deep drops into the crashing sea. Beyond those dangerous mountain roads, another world suddenly appears. Paul Valley. It's hard to believe such a lush green oasis exists among these barren mountains. Through the mist, brightly coloured houses seem to defy gravity. Some are built into the mountainside, while others sit right on the edge of the cliffs. For centuries, people have continued to live here. On the steep terraces, they grow sugar cane and bananas to make a living. In the local language, Boa Vista means beautiful view, and the island lives up to its name. Clear turquoise water surrounds long stretches of golden sand. The contrast creates a stunning landscape. This desert in the ocean was formed when the trade winds carried sand from the Sahara across hundreds of miles of ocean and deposited it here. Standing alone by the shore is the rusting wreck of a ship that ran aground long ago. The island's isolation left it forgotten for centuries. Despite the dry climate, people make a living through fishing, goat herding, and salt production. The slow, emotional songs of mourner tell stories of separation and homesickness across the sea. Just a few dozen miles from Boa Vista lies Sal Island. Here, golden desert sands meet the turquoise waters of the Atlantic. But the heart of the island lies inland at Pedra de Lume. It's an extinct volcanic crater. Over thousands of years, seawater seeped through the rock, evaporated and formed a brilliant natural salt lake. The salt flats are divided into neat square ponds for harvesting. They shimmer in shades of white, pink, and turquoise, reflecting the sunlight like giant mirrors. For many years, this white gold supported the island's economy. Today, the salt industry has expanded into tourism and wellness. The water is so salty that visitors can float effortlessly. The mineral-rich mud is also popular for spa treatments. El Hierro is the smallest and most remote of the Canary Islands. It sits alone in the Atlantic. More than 600 miles from mainland Europe. From above, it looks like a giant block of volcanic rock. Deep cliffs plunge into turquoise water, while powerful waves carve natural pools into the black coastline. Its rugged terrain makes much of the coast nearly impossible to reach. Getting here means connecting through the larger islands by plane or ferry. Even so, more than 11,000 people have lived here for generations. They make a living by fishing, farming, and raising livestock on the volcanic slope. Their homes sit right along the shoreline as if they've learned to live in harmony with the island's wild nature. Part of the Canary Islands, La Gomera isn't known for calm beaches. It looks more like a mountain torn apart in the middle of the Atlantic. Deep ravines spread out from the island's centre, dividing it into narrow valleys and steep hillsides. White houses with red roofs cling to rocky terraces and winding mountain roads. Inland, ancient forests are covered in lush mountain greenery. Thick fog hangs over the treetops, making time seem to stand still. Because the mountains and valleys separated communities, normal speech couldn't travel far enough. So the people of La Gomera created Silbo Gomero, a unique whistled language. Its sounds can carry across entire valleys from one mountainside to another. Porto Santo is a small island sitting alone in the North Atlantic, more than 500 miles from mainland Portugal. Unlike the green island of Madeira nearby, Porto Santo is covered with bare hills, dry mountainsides, and brownish grey fields. With very little rainfall, fresh water has always been scarce. The poor soil made farming difficult, and for centuries people relied on every drop of rainwater to survive. Yet this rugged island is home to a long stretch of golden sand beside clear turquoise water. Instead of leaving, the locals turned nature's rare gift into their greatest advantage. Today, visitors come to relax under the gentle sun, walk along the quiet beach, and enjoy the warm ocean year-round. Life on Porto Santo feels peaceful, far removed from the noise of the mainland. Heimaey is the largest island in the Westman Islands. Towering cliffs, green grasslands, and massive volcanic craters surround it. More than 4,000 people live at the foot of volcanoes that have erupted many times. Small homes spread across a narrow plain just below the slopes. In 1973, the Eldfell volcano erupted only a few hundred yards from the town. Glowing lava flowed down the mountainside toward the harbour. Within hours, the entire population had to evacuate. It seemed Heimaey would disappear beneath the lava. But once the eruption ended, people returned to clear away millions of tons of ash and rebuild their homes. To save the harbour from being sealed by lava, they pumped millions of gallons of seawater onto the flow to cool it. It remains one of the boldest volcanic rescue efforts ever recorded. After dark, glowing lava shoots high into the sky. Explosions echo across the sea. Yet right below the volcano, a small village still glows with lights. This is Stromboli, a volcanic island in the middle of the Tyrrhenian Sea. White houses with flat roofs line a narrow strip of coastline. The open sea lies ahead. Behind them stands a volcano that never truly sleeps. For more than 2,000 years, Stromboli has constantly released ash, hot gas, and glowing lava. At night, its fiery eruptions have earned it the nickname the Lighthouse of the Mediterranean. Even with the volcano constantly rumbling, about 400 people live here year-round. They fish and go about their daily lives at the foot of the volcano. To them, the explosions, drifting smoke, and thin layer of ash on the rooftops are simply part of everyday life. One of the clearest examples of people adapting to nature is Pantelleria. Located between Sicily and Tunisia, Pantelleria is a volcanic island. Its hills are covered with black volcanic rock. Steep cliffs drop into the sea, while ancient craters dot the dry landscape. Strong winds blow almost year-round. The hot, dry climate leaves little fresh water, and the rocky ground makes farming a constant challenge. Strong winds blow almost year-round. The hot, dry climate leaves little fresh water, and the rocky ground makes farming a constant challenge. To adapt, people built traditional damuso homes from volcanic stone. Their thick walls and white-domed roofs keep out the heat, block the wind, and collect precious rainwater. Across the hillsides, low stone walls protect the vineyards from the wind, allowing grapes to grow on an island that seems almost impossible to farm. Réunion lies deep in the Indian Ocean, thousands of miles from France. Blue seas and dense forests make it look like a tropical paradise. But don't let that fool you. Hidden beneath its beauty is a rugged landscape. Deep canyons, giant cirques, and steep cliffs divide the island into isolated regions. Inside Cirque de Mafat, small villages are surrounded by mountains on every side. They can only be reached by hiking trails or helicopter. At the island's centre, Piton de la Fournaise remains one of the world's most active volcanoes. The landscape continues to change with every eruption. Towns stretch across the mountain slopes and coastline. Roads carved along the cliffs connect communities separated by the terrain. For generations, people here have learned to live with volcanoes, tropical storms, and one of the most challenging landscapes on Earth. Off the southern coast of Japan, Yakushima covers about 195 square miles. Around 90% of the island is covered by mountains and forests. Peaks reaching about 6,500 feet trap moist air from the sea, bringing up to 10,000 millimeters of rain each year. The Japanese even joke that Yakushima gets 35 days of rain every month. That endless rainfall supports more than 1,900 plant species, along with hundreds of kinds of moss and ferns. Ancient cedar trees, some thousands of years old, rise above the forest. Their massive trunks look like living walls, while thick roots twist across the ground. Beneath the dense canopy, sunlight fades into a soft glow. Clear streams wind through moss-covered rocks, and old wooden bridges appear through the mist. Yakushima feels like a real-life fairy tale forest. If you love nature, this island is one place you shouldn't miss. Jeju is South Korea's largest island, but its story doesn't begin with the sea. It begins with a volcano. The entire island was formed by volcanic eruptions about 2 million years ago. At the island's center stands Halasan, rising about 6,500 feet into the clouds. Around it are more than 360 smaller volcanic cones. Beneath the black basalt lies a hidden world. Winding lava tubes, strange rock columns, and cave ceilings stretching for dozens of miles were all formed by cooling lava. Signs of the island's volcanic past are everywhere. Basalt cliffs line the coast, while rich volcanic soil feeds Jeju's famous citrus orchards. Offshore, the Heimaey, Jeju's traditional women divers, still dive without oxygen tanks to harvest abalone, sea urchins, and octopus. Surrounded by blue seas, volcanoes, and underground lava tunnels, Jeju is both wild and unmistakably Korean. Set in the Bashi Channel, where the Pacific Ocean meets the South China Sea, Batanes is known as the Islands of the Wind. Around 20 typhoons and tropical storms pass through these waters every year. Powerful waves crash against the island's steep cliffs. There are no quiet tropical beaches here. Instead, Batanes is known for its rolling green hills, shaped by wind and sea over thousands of years. The province has 10 islands, but only 3 are inhabited. The Ivatan people build homes from limestone and coral. Their walls are nearly 3 feet thick, topped with low kogon grass roofs. Every stone is carefully placed, creating homes that have survived countless storms. On these windswept islands, the rough seas, lonely lighthouses, and sturdy stone houses have become symbols of Batanes. Out in the rough Atlantic, the Aran Islands rise like giant slabs of stone. White waves crash endlessly against the cliffs, while patches of grass break up the endless grey limestone. From above, the islands look like a giant checkerboard. Thousands of winding stone walls stretch across the land. Built without mortar, they have stood for centuries, shielding the islands from Atlantic storms. Between those stone walls lies a thin layer of soil created by human hands. Generation after generation, people carried seaweed and sand to build fields where crops could grow. Low stone cottages sit behind the walls. Their steep roofs face the sea, quietly standing against the Atlantic winds. Life here still moves much as it did centuries ago. There is a place where the wind never seems to stop. The Orkney Islands sit between the North Sea and the Atlantic, where cold ocean currents keep the surrounding waters icy year-round. Strong winds sweep across the grasslands and wear away the cliffs, creating a rugged landscape. For more than 5,000 years, people have learned to live with the wind. Low stone houses were built to withstand the weather. People raise sheep and cattle, fish the surrounding waters, and welcome boats into small harbours. Life here moves slowly, always connected to nature. The past is everywhere on these islands. Neolithic villages, massive stone circles, and countless ancient monuments have stood for thousands of years. The people of Orkney still live alongside them. Here, the past and present have never truly been separated. The villages of Shetland all face the sea. That's how the people here have always faced their greatest challenge. Fishing boats fill the harbours while rows of red, yellow and white houses line the waterfront. For centuries, the sea has provided both a living and an identity for the people of Shetland. The Vikings once sailed here, leaving a legacy that lives on today. Every winter, a Viking longship is carried through the streets before being set ablaze during the Uphelly Ar festival. Along the grassy coastline, Shetland sheep graze peacefully. Their soft wool is used to make knitwear known around the world. Offshore, fishing boats still head out each morning, continuing a way of life that has lasted for generations. Svalbard is the northernmost place on Earth where people live year-round. About 60% of the archipelago is covered by glaciers. Towering ice cliffs plunge into the sea, where seals, Arctic foxes, and walruses live in the freezing waters. Across more than 23,000 square miles of Arctic wilderness, the town of Longyearbyen stands out with its rows of colourful houses along the bay, surrounded by snow-covered mountains. In winter, the sun disappears for more than 100 days. The town is left in darkness, with only the lights from the houses glowing through the night. Anyone leaving town must watch out for polar bears. Today, more than 2,000 people from many countries call Longyearbyen home. Hidden inside a mountain is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, where more than 1.3 million seed samples are stored to protect the world's crops in case of disaster. Ilulissat sits on Disco Bay, where ice is everywhere. Behind the town, the Sermeck Glacier slides from the ice sheet into the sea at a rate of 65 to 130 feet a day. Nearly 25 miles long, the Ilulissat Ice Fjord is one of Greenland's greatest ice factories, producing about 10% of all the island's icebergs. Day and night, towering icebergs drift silently through the bay. Only a small part rises above the surface. Most of the ice remains hidden beneath the water. Ice shapes every part of daily life. Fishermen work among drifting icebergs, steering their boats through giant blocks of ice to reach open water. Rows of colourful houses sit on snowy hillsides, while the sound of cracking ice echoes through the town every day. Here, people's lives are tied to the ice in the most literal way. About 2,000 people live year-round in Tasiilaq, the largest town on a Masaalik island. Surrounded by snowy mountains, fjords and sea ice, it is almost completely cut off from the outside world. No roads connect Tasiilaq to other towns. Travel depends on helicopters, boats or seasonal ice routes. In winter, when the sea and fjords freeze over, dog sleds become an essential form of transportation. Even in this frozen landscape, people continue fishing and living in brightly coloured homes on the hillsides. Around the town rise towering mountains, glaciers and fjords filled with drifting ice. Despite its harsh climate, Tasiilaq remains the heart of the Inuit community in eastern Greenland. Chichijima is part of the Ogasawara Islands, which belong to Tokyo but lie about 620 miles from mainland Japan in the Pacific Ocean. There are no flights or airports for tourists. The only way here is by ferry from Tokyo, a 24-hour journey across the sea. As the ferry arrives at Futami Port, Chichijima feels nothing like a busy resort. Forested mountains surround deep bays while crystal clear water reveals coral reefs below. Its forests, coastal cliffs and small harbours make the island feel like a forgotten natural world. People here depend on ecotourism and the ships that bring supplies, news, and visitors from their mainland. Across the wind-swept grasslands of Rapa Nui, nearly 1,000 Moai statues have stood facing inland for centuries. Most were carved from volcanic rock. They have long faces, deep eye sockets, prominent noses, pressed lips, and solid stone bodies. On average, each statue stands about 13 feet tall and weighs more than 10 tons. Some unfinished statues reach over 66 feet and weigh hundreds of tons. What still amazes archaeologists is how the island's early people carved these massive stones, moved them from the Rano Raraku volcano across the island, and raised them on stone platforms along the coast. There were no wheels, no metal tools, and no written records explaining how it was done. That mystery has fueled theories that aliens once visited Rapa Nui and built the statues. To this day, it remains one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. Pitcairn is a small volcanic island where steep cliffs plunge into the deep blue waters of the South Pacific. Palm forests cover the hillsides, and the island has almost no beaches or natural harbours. Landing here always depends on small boats weaving through heavy waves. There is no airport. Reaching the island means spending days at sea before transferring to a small boat. Only a few dozen people live in Adamstown, the island's only village. Nearly everyone knows each other, sharing the work of meeting ships, carrying supplies, gardening, and keeping the community running. Most residents are descendants of the first settlers who arrived more than 200 years ago after the mutiny aboard HMS Bounty. In the middle of the ocean, they continued not only a small community, but the story of their own ancestors. The world's most remote inhabited island is Tristan da Cunha. Rising from the South Atlantic, the island is a massive volcanic peak. Steep green slopes surround open grasslands, while a handful of houses sit quietly at the foot of the mountain. The only way to get here is by ship from South Africa. A journey of nearly a week. Only a few supply and passenger ships reach the island each year. All 240 residents live in Edinburgh of the Seven Seas, the island's only village. Life revolves around potato fields, sheep, cattle, and lobster fishing. Most people share just a handful of family names passed down from the first settlers, creating a close-knit community that feels like one big family. Even after being forced to evacuate during a volcanic eruption, they return to rebuild their tiny village in the middle of the ocean. Across the vast oceans, these 32 islands feel like forgotten corners of the world. Some are buried beneath ice, some live under the shadow of volcanoes, others face powerful storms or year-round isolation. Nature has never made life easy here. Yet for hundreds, even thousands of years, people have come, stayed, and found ways to adapt. From homes built with volcanic stone to windbreak walls and roads carved into cliffs, together they prove one simple truth. No matter how remote or harsh a place may be, people will always find a way to make it home.